Hello all my JavaScript friends, this is TheVirtuoid, aka Mike Smith, and this is our Hold That Tower game. Okay, it's time for our first video, and in this first one we're going to take a look at what PhaserJS calls the different scenes within the game. I'm going to first show you the bootstrap code that we use for the game, and then I'm going to show you the two different scenes that we currently have. And we'll probably end up with a third scene with the game over, but I haven't decided what to do about that yet. We'll deal with that a little bit later on. First, we'll take a look at how I'm using PhaserJS to bootstrap the game. And this is very, very simple. The idea here basically is whenever you do PhaserJS, you pass it a configuration. And I got the configuration stored here in a program called Hold That Tower JS, which if we go to our index file, basically there it is. It's just there. It's just the script itself. And by the way, here's all the different fonts that I'm using there. But I just call the script and we're done. It's a type equals module, and we just loads it up and just let it rip. So it's basically very easy. On here, we're giving it a width and a height of what our parent is. I call it Phaser example because that's what the example I used did. I'll be using pixel art. I am telling it that I'll be using a gamepad, and eventually I'll be having this game to use either a gamepad or a keyboard. That will depend upon how the person or how your user will be able to wants to be able to use it. Automatic scaling, I've got that all set up. The physics are going to be very basic. I've given it an arcade physics, and then I'm defining within the arcade physics that there's going to be zero gravity, and I don't want to do debugging, at least for right now. So if I ever have to do debugging, I do debugging. But that's basically it. We just do a Phaser game config. I'm adding my different scenes. I'll explain that here in just a second. And then once I click on the start button, it will start the scene. The only thing I've done here is that this is something that is a third-party library that allows me to load in web fonts, and this is how I'm loading in the web font that we're currently using from Google. It's called Press Start 2P. It's the one that I found that works the best. And then basically once that finishes up, I tell it to do the beginning scene. So let's go through those two different scenes. First of all, what is a scene? A scene is basically a screen, for lack of a better term. This is the screen that you see up on, well, this is the scene that you see up on the screen, basically. So for instance, if we take a look right now at what we're currently looking at, this is called the beginning screen. It has a little picture here. It has the word Hold the Tower, has an a castle icon, two little fingers, and a new game button. So let's take a look at how that was constructed. This is the beginning screen itself. It always has to extend phaser.scene. Everything here extends phaser.scene. And we also have to give it a particular key. This is the ground that you see in the background. Let me show you that back again. This is that brown background that you see here. We've got that defined within this ground class, and I'll be covering that in another video here. The idea here with that one, let's expand the size here. The idea here is that there's, at least with what I am working with, there are three very important methods that we need to call. First one is called the preload method, and this is where you preload all of your different images that are going to be using it. In this case, I'm using the ground image, and I've got a preload method on my ground class. And then I'm loading into four different images I use for this screen here. This is the picture frame that you saw there. Let's do that again here. That picture frame that's around Hold That Tower. The castle itself that came in the middle. The one finger. And I've used this one twice, basically. Once to point one way and once to point the other. And then the new game button itself. And this is just basically a button that I developed that has the word new game in it. Now that I know a little bit more about PhaserJS, I'm going to redesign that. So that's within the preload. So the whole purpose of the preload is to be able to load in all your images. Then you come to the create section. And this is where it actually builds everything up. I'm telling it to enable the gamepad and also create the ground itself. Within all the classes that I am working with, I have routines called create, just like phaser.scene does, and this create, it allows me to be able to hook into the create, just like I used a static one called preload there. I'm using the regular one here called create. Don't ask why, just the way I did it here. Here's the picture frame. I'm adding in the image, and I'm setting the position, setting it visible. Here's where I add in some text. It's very simple. There's the Hold the Tower text. I'm using the tiny 5. I want to change that to the phaser or the player 2, or what is it? player 2p. I can't remember what it's called. Either way, I want to change it to something else besides that one. Here's where I load in the castle. Everything's through an add image. Give it XY. Give it the texture name, scale, visibility, position, finger left, finger right, and the new game button. Real simple. All of these are just adding images to the screen itself. So once this is all done, boom, it shows up on the screen. And then everything works within the update routine. That's the third routine that's important to us. Why is there nothing here? Because there's nothing for me to update. There's nothing moving on the screen. If I had some sort of graphics or something, kind of moving on the screen, like, a couple of enemies moving across like that, that's where I put here. But I have nothing in this particular case. And so what I do here is that when I click on the button, the new game button, I stop the current scene, which is the beginning scene, and I emit a start event for saying, hey, I want you to start the gameplay scene. And when it emits that event, it will go to the gameplay scene and run the gameplay scene. So let's go back to the screen. And if I click on new game, this is the gameplay screen. So let's now take a look at the gameplay screen code. So the gameplay screen works exactly the same way. It's just obviously it's a lot more complicated. A lot of the imports and everything like that is no big deal. But again, just like with the beginning one, we have a constructor where first of all we are extending the phaser.scene. We do the constructor where we give it a name. We do a preload of all the different images. So here's all the different images we have that we use currently in the game, and this will expand or get smaller depending upon what we use. The create is the big one here. First of all, I'm setting up events. Everything I have here is going to be event driven, and I will spend one particular video straight on events. But I am trying my best in this particular case, unlike some of the other games I had here, where absolutely everything is event driven. So if a tower if we hit a tower with some damage, or if an enemy hits a tower, the enemy will report back to an event saying, hey, to the game saying, hey, I have, hit the tower. What do you want me to do? Or if a bullet hits an enemy, the bullet will report back saying, hey, I've hit an enemy. What do you want me to do? And so all of these we'll figure out what needs to be done. Game over, enemy reached the tower, enemy destroyed, runner returned, runner destroyed, any kind of missiles that hit, wave is started, wave ending, a new wave, a card is selected, an update is selected, things like that. Then we create the ground, that's that background. We create the tower, we create the statistics on the left-hand side, right there. We start the gamepad input. Now, right now, the gamepad input is not in a class. I'm going to be putting it in its own class called input that will also allow you to be able to use a joystick, any kind of other joystick besides a game controller or if a keyboard or something like that, but it's no big deal. The card select, this allows me to be able to have a routine to be able to figure out what card you selected, and that's the screen that you get when the wave is finished up here. In this case, zoom, more workout, and punch. Things like that. So that's the create. So all of that is just to create what we get on the screen. Then we get the update, and the update is what it is the routine that runs every certain number of milliseconds and we have to tell the PhaserJS what we need to do every couple of milliseconds. We set the last launch time. We figure out if there is a gamepad. I got a little to do here, left, right-handed. That will be figured out once we have an input routine here, but I basically figured out what to do with the gamepad. And if the gamepad, if I've noticed a change in the left stick of the gamepad, then I take every single one of the guns and I use a routine here, a mathematical routine here, to be able to rotate them along that particular circle of the tower. This is actually taken care of in another routine. I should have this over here. This is where I figured out the X. If I press the X button, then it will automatically restore all health if I'm able to restore all health. That's what says button selectable here. So I'm getting the button from the statistics, and if it's selectable, then I'm doing the event that will allow me to go ahead and upgrade or update the health of my player. If I hit the A pad is the button. I've got a 200 millisecond delay. You can't fire anything more than 200 milliseconds or 5 bullets a game. And then I will fire a bullet out of the guns. And this will fire a single bullet out of every single gun that you have on your tower. And you can have as many as 12 different guns. And again, we'll go through that a little bit later on. And then a little routine here. If the bullets go off screen, we don't want to see them anymore. We move them from the system. Then we schedule the next enemy move. This allows us to be able to schedule, take all our enemies and schedule, where their next move is going to be. And then we determine if we have dropped a prize or not and the wave is not ended, then we also then schedule the next runner. And this basically allows me to be able to say, oh, a prize has been dropped and the wave hasn't ended, so send out the runner to go get that prize. Then we get into the different, and then basically that's all there is to the update section. That's it. It just runs through that every time. Mostly it's just about, have you done something on the gamepad? And if you haven't done something on the gamepad, what are we going to do with the enemies and the runners? That's all there is to it. Everything else here is all the different events. For instance, handling a button collision. This is, if there's been a collision with a button, we need to find out which enemy has been hit, and then we need to send out a event that has occurred. Clear drop prizes. This is something that I have on my system here, saying that if there's any drop prizes once the wave ends, they all disappear. This basically forces you to have runners that are fast and as many runners as possible so you can get all those prizes. You don't get the prizes you don't pick up, basically. This is some routine here for dropping a prize. I try to figure out where the prize is based upon the position of the enemy when the enemy was destroyed, and I drop it and I tell the system, hey, you got to drop prize. This is what happens on the game over. This is something that I will probably end up doing a little bit better. Right now, it just shows the word, the words game over, and that's it, and a red box. And I'm going to have more to it than just that, like statistics, how many shots you'd had, how many kills you had, and all that kind of fun stuff. This is if you've selected a card. If you selected one of the upgrades, this is the restore health upgrade. Let me bring the full screen here. This is the upgrades that are on the side here. For restore health, add runner, and add gun. That's the routine that handles that. So we're either upgrading health, upgrading runner, and upgrading gun. So if I have additional ones, which I will later on, then I can just take care of them here too. On enemy reach tower, these are all the different events that are coming in from other objects. This is what we do if an enemy reaches a tower. This is where we know that we've ended the wave if there's no more enemies, or that the game is over if there's no more help. On enemy destroyed, this is where we also end the wave if there's no more enemy, or we drop the prize if since there's an enemy. On the runner return, this is what happens when the runner comes back to the tower, that we update the prizes. Here are ones that are not implemented as of yet because I don't have this written into the game, and I may not do this right now. These are things I wanted to do, but I'm sitting here thinking, let's keep things simple for right now. We'll increase it a little bit later on. When a missile hits an enemy, which is basically when a bullet has hit an enemy, this gives up an enemy destroyed message if they know it's been destroyed. Missile can hit a missile, again, not implemented. This is what happens when a wave has started and we everything gets going, does whatever it needs to do. What happens when the wave is ended, when we destroy the enemies and the bullets? So you can't fire any more bullets. We clear out all the drop prizes. And if the game is not over, then we send up the cards to select. And this is what happens when there is a new wave. We set up groups of physics groups to be able to figure out, help us with collisions. And I will go through this when we get to the bullets and when we get to enemies. I will go over that a little bit separately. So everything is set up here. This is where we set up all the different physics for everything. We set up the statistics, make sure everything is ready to go, and then once it's ready to go, we send out an event saying, hey, the wave has started. Once they select a card, this is what happens when we select a card. And once we select the card, that means you can only select one card. We cleared out all the other cards, which is this section right here, and then we have 5 seconds before it is ready to go for a new wave. And this updates all the different stats. So if there's ever a update to our health or our max health, depending upon the card type, we update that. And that's pretty much it. So gameplay is basically our game object, and it controls absolutely everything there is about the game. Everything is going through this update, and it will sit there and tell the enemies, and tell the bullets, and tell the runners, and tell the tower things that are happening to it. And then the tower and the runners and the enemies and the bullets will then communicate back to that through all of these different events on what you want me to do with that. And this allows me to be able to specifically target particular events to occur at particular times. Now, I've gone through this a whole lot here, but that's really all there is to it. The gameplay is actually real simple in concept. We create everything, we update everything, we respond to events as they come in from all the different runners and all the different enemies and all the different bullets and all the different towers and all that kind of fun stuff to be able to determine what has going on. And so that is the two scenes that we have created here, the beginning scene and the play scene. And so our next video, we're going to start taking a look at all the different classes one at a time. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to this channel to view more videos. Click on the like button on this video and visit us at TheVirtuoid.com. Also, support us on Patreon, where you can get access to member-only videos. Links are down below. Again, thank you very much for watching, and keep on coding.